Hello everyone. My name is Adam Ruff. I am a longtime 9/11 Truth activist. I was part of the formation of We AreChange Los Angeles way back in 2007. We started that group, and we made some waves out here on the West Coast. We infiltrated the live TV studio of the Bill Maher show, and we interrupted his show, and that was quite a big deal back then, because every year in September, Bill Maher would get up there and ridicule 9/11 truthers on his show, and so we decided to infiltrate his studio audience. And we got up and interrupted his show, and there was quite a few of us that got up and disrupted his little program there. And Bill got so upset, he actually ran up into the audience on live TV and grabbed my friend Randy and forced him out of the studio. Uh, so it was really quite a big deal. And
Wow.
I think to this day, it's still his most viewed show ever, probably, because our YouTube upload of that confrontation got about 11 million hits way back then. It went mega viral, and then HBO started taking down all our videos because they were so popular. But anyway, since I co-founded We Are Change LA, I've been researching 9/11 voraciously, and over the last 15 years or so, I've concentrated quite a bit on the Pentagon, and so I've researched that a lot. And one of the other areas that I've done a lot of research in is infiltration, COINTELPRO, and disinformation tactics. So that's what I was going to talk about today, if you'll be patient with me.
Do you want to share screen?
It's not necessary. I'm just going to talk, and I can send links in the chat if you like
Oh,
to some of the things I'm going to be talking about. Let me get the chat open.
Can you send a
Okay.
link to that video you're talking about?
To the real time with Bill Maher show?
Yeah,
Sure,
I'd
sure.
love to watch that.
Let me send that real quick. Hang on. Got to manage the various screens here. Okay. Okay, I'll just send you the link to part one. And part two you can find in the description of part one. So
Great, thank you.
here it is in the chat there.
Sue, would you be willing to email whatever those are for those of us who
yeah,
can't find chat?
Sure.
Thank you.
absolutely.
Yeah, no problem. So if you like, I can get into my little talk here. I hope it won't be too lengthy. I kind of shortened it up as much as I could. So it's just going to be kind of a basic overview of the reality of the infiltration of the 9/11 truth movement. So I say it's a reality because of past history. So one of the ways you can determine that this is really happening is you can look at the past. So one of the examples that I use to illustrate the reality of infiltration is there was a documentary film made some years ago about Walmart. And the documentary was called Walmart, The High Cost of Low Price. And in that film, it was revealed that Walmart staffed a war room, so to speak, full of social media operatives. That's the best word for it. They staffed over 100 people to work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on social media to discredit the film before it came out. So these people fanned out on social media and, said this film is terrible, it's full of lies, blah, blah, blah. So they paid those people for well over a month, over 100 people they paid to fan out across social media to try to reduce the impact of this film on Walmart's bottom line. So that's in the film. So I recommend that you go watch that if you can. But another example of real life infiltration of a movement can be found in the situation with the ranchers who occupied a wildlife refuge in Oregon to protest the treatment of ranching family out there. You may have heard of Ammon Bundy, you may not have. But anyway, a bunch of ranchers occupied this wildlife refuge that the federal government claimed ownership of. And so there was a standoff between these ranchers that were protesting their poor treatment and the government. And the government surrounded the place with FBI, and it became a very tense situation. And it culminated with one of the ranchers being killed by the FBI and the Oregon State Police. He was on his way to a neighboring county to talk to the ranchers and the sheriff in that neighboring county. And he was trapped by a roadblock put up by the FBI and the Oregon State Police, and they shot him. His name was Lavoy Finicum. So a trial resulted from this standoff, and at the trial, it was revealed by the release of the court documents that the FBI had 15 paid informants that had infiltrated the refuge and were part of the protest, but they were actually there to report on the protesters, and they were working for the FBI. Some of them got paid quite a bit of money to do that. So it's a documented case where the FBI at some points during the protest, because people were coming and going from this ranch, from this wildlife refuge, at some points during that occupation, there were more FBI informants inside that refuge than there were actual protesters. So that's just what the FBI does. And you can find out more about that if you look into a program initiated by the FBI called COINTELPRO. Now, COINTELPRO was initiated against various organizations, including the Communist Party, the Socialist Workers' Party, the Puerto Rican Nationalist Party, the Black Panthers, and one called the American Indian Movement, or AIM. AIM is their acronym. And a couple others were infiltrated as well. And the tactics they used included intense surveillance, organizational infiltration of the groups, anonymous mailings took place, and a lot of police harassment took place. And the whole program of COINTELPRO was exposed in 1971 when a group of citizens calling themselves the Commission to Investigate the FBI burglarized an FBI office in Pennsylvania and stole the confidential files related to the program. And they released those to the press. So that led to a congressional hearing called the Church Committee, in which the COINTELPRO program was exposed. And believe me, they did a lot of dirty tricks. So one of the groups that they infiltrated, as I said, was this group called AIM, AIM, the American Indian Movement. And you can hear a lot about what was done to these people in a Robert Redford film. And the film is called Incident at Oglala. So it's Incident at Oglala. And Robert Redford produced that film, and it really gives you an idea of what the government was doing to the people that were part of AIM. And then one other little bit of evidence that can, verify that the government really does infiltrate groups like ours is there was an article put out by a journalist named Wayne Madsen quite a few years ago. And it was all about the Q group within the NSA. So the Q group inside the NSA does security operations for the NSA. But according to Madsen and his article, and by the way, Madsen worked at the NSA previously, so he's in a good position to know. He says that the Q group had organized quite a few people to concentrate only on the 9/11 Truth movement and disrupt their activities. So, the issue is not if we in the truth movement have been infiltrated. The reality is that we have been very heavily infiltrated with counterintelligence operatives. And the issue is how many operatives have infiltrated our ranks? What are they doing to harm us? And who are they? And lastly, what can we do about it? And how can we tell the difference between you just your run-of-the-mill misguided person who might be spreading some misinformation and a genuine operative that's intentionally spreading disinformation, because they're two different things. So, one of the things that hang on a second. Okay, so in answer to the first question, how many have infiltrated the truth movement? The answer is simple: a lot. But I don't know how many. And there's no way we can know how many people are really genuinely working against us in the truth movement, unless there's some kind of unforeseen disclosure in the future where maybe somebody breaks into FBI headquarters somewhere and uncovers all the documents that prove there were 100 or 1,000 or how many people were involved. We'll never know the answer to that question. But there's always a chance that a whistleblower could step forward and tell us. And we should encourage that, by the way. Any whistleblowers that want to come forward, you can contact me by email anonymously and I'll talk to you. But the second question is, what are they doing to our movement? And this can be answered, but only in a general sense. So the goal of these infiltrators is to disrupt our groups, delay our investigation, demoralize us so that we give up, or discredit our leaders. And this can all be accomplished best by the counterintelligence operatives themselves taking on leadership roles within the truth movement. So this has happened quite a bit in the past. There was a radio host who was ostensibly just a conservative commentator, but it was later revealed, and he was quite popular. It was later revealed he actually worked for the FBI. His name was Hal Turner. That's H-A-L Turner, Hal Turner. So you can look into Hal Turner and find out what they're really up to. But anyway, the point is that they try to disrupt, delay, demoralize, and discredit us. So the 4 Ds, if you will. So the next question is, who are they? Well, that's the hardest question of all to answer because counterintelligence operations are secret by their nature. So short of getting the FBI pay stubs of all the operatives, it's going to be nearly impossible to prove who they are. But that doesn't mean, however, that we can't expose them by uncovering their tactics and by looking at their demeanor. So in this, we have some excellent tools and methods that we can use to expose bad actors in our midst. But maybe this will help some people see where I'm going with this. There's a quote from the Bible, and I'm paraphrasing it, but it's pretty close. It says, "Ye shall know them by the fruits they bear. A corrupt tree cannot bear a good fruit." And if you think about that, that saying, that statement, it gives you a hint as to how you can detect bad actors that are among you. So one of the things you can do is take a look at what their motives are. And oftentimes their motivations and the demeanor, the way they behave, gives them away. So, for example, you can ask questions. Let's say you suspect someone of being an operative in your group. So does this suspected operative spend their time spreading the truth about 9/11? Do they spend time supporting the cause? Or do they spend time attacking other people that are in the truth movement? And do they spend their time questioning and challenging our strong evidence? How do they spend their time? It's important to look at that. Do they, in conversations, if you're talking to a person, are they willing to admit a mistake when they get something wrong? If they're willing to change their stance and admit mistakes, then chances are they're a genuine person and they're really trying to get at the truth. But an operative will refuse to admit mistakes, and they'll refuse to change their stance, and they'll refuse to go back and correct the record if they say something that's provably false. Because this is their job. Their job is to, remember, disrupt, delay, demoralize, and discredit us. That's their job. So they get paid to do that. So they're not going to go back and admit mistakes because they would lose ground. They would lose credibility in their job. So, simple questions can be asked of people if you suspect that maybe they're not on the up and up. Like for instance, you can ask them questions and see how they respond. Do they use disinformation tactics when they respond? Do they create straw men about you? And do they try to goad you with insults and do everything possible to avoid the topic of the discussion? Or do they attempt to derail the discussion onto something else? These are all indications that maybe you're not dealing with a person that has the best motives in mind. Do they utilize logical fallacies in their arguments? Like, for example, I hear this one a lot with the man-made global warming fraud, and I call it a fraud because it is a fraud. And I'll discuss that some other time. But the man-made global warming broad. They often say, well, all these 97% of scientists agree that it is man-caused global warming, and we're causing it. Well, that's called an appeal to authority. And the logic behind it is that because 97% of scientists agree, therefore it is true. And that's a logical fallacy. Scientists have been wrong many times before, and they'll be wrong many times into the future. And also, by the way, that 97% figure that they use all the time, it's a lie. It's a complete lie. It's nowhere near 97%. It's probably closer to 50-50. But anyway, these are ways that you can detect if a person is being honest with you. Do they use any of the 25 rules of disinformation? If you're not familiar with that, I can send you that article. But that is a great tool for getting familiar with the tactics that real operatives use on a daily basis to disrupt our conversations, to disrupt our efforts towards getting to the truth, and so forth. So the 25 rules of disinformation and the 8 traits of the disinformationalist are fantastic tools for determining whether you're dealing with an honest person or not. And once you study those, it starts to become clear after you look back at some of your conversations you've had in the past and evaluate, if you're in a difficult conversation with somebody and all of a sudden they start with insulting you or trying to disrupt the topic of discussion, trail it off onto something else. They're likely using a disinformation tactic to try to spoil the discussion and what you might eventually uncover and what you might actually come to agreement on. So they want to disrupt that and hinder our efforts. And so these 25 rules of disinformation and the 8 traits of the disinformationalist will tell you the tactics that they use. So I can go ahead and drop that article into the chat here. But like I said, once you study those, it'll start to become clear who the bad actors are, and you'll be able to tell the difference between somebody that maybe is just a little misguided and wrong about something and a genuine operative that is there for malevolent purposes. Because there's a big difference. So a person that's genuinely there to find the truth is willing to admit a mistake. If they make a mistake, they're willing to say, "Oh, well, gee, I was wrong about that. Tell me what you found out." And they're willing to listen to you, and they're willing to be reasonable and have a reasonable discussion and stay on the topic until it's resolved. But a disinformationalist won't do that. They will try to derail the conversation. They'll try to deny that they said anything wrong, or they'll deny that you're presenting any valid evidence. This is something they do all the time. You can present a whole plethora of evidence to someone, and they'll completely disregard everything that you said, and then just say, "Oh, well, you were found guilty of drunk driving back in the 60s." So they'll try to control the discussion by veering it off onto something else, and that's a very common tactic. But just remember, if you want to identify who the bad guys are, and it won't be easy, and we'll never have proof, but you can look at the 5 Ds, okay, and remember what those are, which they are: uh, disrupt, delay, demoralize, discredit, and perhaps spread disinformation would be the 5th D. And so what I'll do is I'll drop those articles in there so you can see them, and I'll open it up for questions if anybody wants to talk about this.
Do you have a name of anybody that you have come across? I don't know if you want to put out names, but as an example, that you personally uncovered,
Mm-hmm. I do.
are you willing to share that?
It's
Yeah.
my firm belief that Wayne Costi and David Chandler are both professional operatives. And they fit all the criteria, in my opinion. They utilize a lot of these methods of disinformation. And I've had a debate myself with Wayne Costi, and I feel like I soundly beat him. I was in that debate with Craig McKee, and we were voted as the victors, for whatever that's worth, in the debate. But Wayne has been extremely persistent, very prolific, and he has spent years, literally years, and so has David Chandler, supporting the official story of what happened at the Pentagon. Almost every detail of the official story, Wayne Costi and David Chandler, they support that. They make some minor differentiations. They say, well, we don't think it was Hani Hanjour at the helm of the plane. But that's about it. Otherwise, they support the official story despite all the evidence to the contrary. So, in my opinion, those two are operatives.
Neeson has his hand raised. Go ahead, Neeson.
Yes. So first of all, I'd like to thank you for letting me come on here today. And also, I'm glad to hear that you guys are actively, learning about, infiltration, COINTELPRO, in all these areas, and you recognize that, and you are starting the work of educating people about it. That's very important. I've been in many different groups, and I'm pretty sure I personally witnessed and came across some operatives directly. It was I give people the benefit of the doubt, but there was 2 people in mind that was like so blatant about it. It's like I could not believe, from
Mm-hmm.
getting into the meetings and then trying to talk about stuff, holding up meetings, to actively, starting to like target other people, for like saying that they're trying to take over.
Mm-hmm.
And basically everybody that are always attacking people that are actually doing the work.
Right. Well,
You know,
one of the ploys, one of the tactics of a disinformationalist, if you look, I just posted that in the chat there, is let's see, rule number, it's called the attack the messenger ploy. So when you attack the messenger instead of addressing the message, that's a tactic of disinformation. So what will happen is maybe someone will present a fantastic case for why no plane hit the Pentagon. I think myself and some other people that I know have done that. And what operatives will do is, instead of addressing the evidence that we present, they will attack the messenger. They will accuse me and others of being, oh, you're disruptive, you're attacking people, you're making things unfriendly in the truth movement. And that's not at all what's happening. What's happening is they're attempting to derail the conversation using a disinformation tactic. So
Yeah,
it
so
happens all the time.
yeah. But also because you wanted to mention you got into very deeply into the Pentagon,
Right.
which also got me into like looking at it deeply because I'm even though I'm from New York, uh, and I could kind of see like something happening, even though the tower fell was a little bit Yankee, whatever. But when I hear about the Pentagon, none of that, none of that sounded right. About what the
Right.
plane did, and the fact that when they literally reported that it hit the only side of the almost no one was injured, or like one person was killed because that
Well,
was the that
that's not actually true. There was quite a few people that were killed inside the Pentagon,
okay.
and a couple people that were wounded, and they crawled out the
Okay.
hole that was made by whatever explosives they used to
Yeah,
create that
but
hole.
it was true. It was under construction, right? Like that wing was supposed to be under construction.
Yeah, that wing held the accountants that were
Yeah,
investigating the $2.3
3
trillion
trillion. Yeah.
that the Pentagon lost.
Yes.
And that was reported by Donald Rumsfeld the day before
Yes.
9/11. He said the Pentagon can't account for $2.3 trillion. And all the accountants investigating that were in that wing of the Pentagon.
Yeah. Was in that one Pacific one? Yeah. And also was it a general? I think it was a general there too that brought it up.
Oh, probably was, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I forgot the name of the general, but there was one general and a bunch of accountants like looking the thing up. He was holding that. I'm like,
Yeah, you can look into a lady by the name of April Gallup,
Yeah.
because a lot of disinformation efforts have been directed at her because of what she said about what she saw that day. She actually came out through the hole that was created in the side of the Pentagon by whatever means. I don't believe it was a plane, but she came out through that hole onto the lawn, and she had her child with her. So she rescued her child from this burning section of the Pentagon and crawled out through that hole. And I have never seen somebody attack so viciously and so incessantly as her. She's
Adam,
been subjected to so much disinformation and attacks. It's just unbelievable.
Adam.
Yes.
Yeah, Barb Honegger here. Just a slight correction. I did an
Yep.
under oath 2-hour videotaped testimony with April Gallup, which I can
Mhm.
provide to people. And she did not walk out of the alleged entrance hole. She was
Oh, okay.
helped out of a window just behind that red fire truck by just to the right,
Oh, I
just to the
see.
south
Okay.
of the firehouse, by
Okay.
two officers, and they have given their sworn testimony to uh, the Department of Defense History Project, which you can read
Okay.
online. So she didn't. She was. It's important for people to know that
Right.
when she was
Well,
taken to.
yeah, I had heard for years that she came out through the hole. So
Well, but
that's
allow me
interesting.
allow me to
I'd
say
really
why.
like to look at that. Yeah,
Allow me to say why briefly.
sure.
When she went to the hospital, three top officers from the Navy, the Air Force, and the Army came to her bed and told her that that's what she had done. They started the
Mm,
disinformation. The
I
the
see.
the
Okay.
disinformation artist from the Pentagon itself began that false story. Thank you.
Wow.
Yeah, I would be interested, Barbara, in seeing that interview. I haven't seen it. So if you could send it to
I will
me, that
send
would be
it to
great.
Sue, the transcript of it. I do not have permission from April Gallup to make the video public online
Okay.
unless it is part of a grand jury proceeding, a congressional investigation
Oh,
hearing.
I understand completely because she's been through so much for
She's
so
been
many
put through hell,
years.
literally. And
Yeah.
she goes into the hell she was put through by the Pentagon itself in those 2
Yeah.
hours. But I will send you I'll send the transcript to Sue to forward to everyone.
Oh, that'd be great. Thank you.
Thank you. Craig has his hand up.
Yeah, yeah. Hi.
Hi, Craig.
Hi there. Yeah, I have a couple of things to bring up, and I mean, first of all, as you kind of suggested, I want to add my voice to the idea that that the Pentagon and the claim that a large plane, or in fact Flight 77, the position has steadily moved towards finally settling on it being the actual flight, hit the Pentagon, and that is the group that has been pushing this for, I mean, it's got to be close to 20 years now, certainly more than 15 years, that has been coordinated and deceptive and single-minded about, and pushing basically almost the entire official story. And as you pointed out, there's only like one small area that they don't where they don't align with the official story. And here's the interesting part: that's the one area they never talk about. So they only talk about the stuff that agrees with the official story. So that's sort of the basis, I guess, of my comment. I want to say, so I consider that to be a COINTELPRO operation. As you point out, we can never know 100% about anybody. We can only judge their behavior. And I feel, and I love your comment on this, I feel that it's if a truther, somebody who lies about evidence or lies about other truthers or lies about what other truthers' positions are, they cannot be a truther. You can't be a liar and a truther at the same time. Given the quick example I'll give is, Ken Dock, who used to run the Facebook group that now Sandra and Jean now run. He did a whole page about me where he accused me of believing that there were holograms at the World Trade Center and a missile flew over the Pentagon.
Right. He created a straw man. That's one of the tactics of a disinformationist.
Yeah.
Is to create a straw man.
Right. So I guess I want to give an example. There's an example. I just published an article, which I know you've read, on my Thought Crimes and Misdemeanors blog, and I can share the link with anybody that isn't aware of it. Basically, this article talks about the effort by the International Center for 9/11 Justice, which is the latest incarnation of this cabal that I think is up to no good and is trying to lead the movement down the garden path. Is now attempting to basically marginalize, if not completely erase, architects and engineers for 9/11 Truth, and replace it as kind of the central organization in the movement. And I gave it.
Well, that would be
ahead.
the ultimate coup for a real operative. Would be to not only take leadership of a group, but take leadership of the entire movement. Lead from the front. That's their ultimate goal. That's the ultimate badge of prowess for a COINTELPRO operative, is to take over the whole thing. So that's
right. And I think at one time they thought they could maybe influence 9AE by pressuring its leaders and that sort of thing. And I think at some point they gave up on that, and they decided that it was time to create a new organization that was going to push AE out. And this is well underway. And the article, just to you can comment on the article. Sort of the hook of it is that Ted Walter, after being fired by AE 9/11 Truth, after he conducted a really vicious internal campaign to discredit Kelly David, so he could basically get the executive director job, he got fired, and then he tried to convince Leroy Halsey from the University of Alaska Fairbanks to disassociate himself from architects and engineers. So this scientist who had done this groundbreaking study, very important study, he wanted to get him away from architects and engineers. And I give numerous examples in the article that show that the International Center is trying to take credit for all kinds of stuff that really belongs, the credit belongs with AE. So now I want to give you an example because this came up in the comment section of that article. As you're aware, there was many messages or comments that went back and forth, particularly between me and Jean Laratonda. And I want your comment on this, as well as the whole thing. What Jean did was he posted a 6,000 word text that had been created by Dave Schlesinger about 8 years ago that slandered and attacked Kelly David and accused her of being a police agent. So Jean posted that in my comment section. And in fact, he had already said in an email that was shared among 12 people, some of them were board members at AE, some of them were included people like David Chandler and Jonathan Cole and Sandra Gelmy and others. In this email, which was a month ago, Jean stated that he knew that this text by Schlesinger was garbage and that it was all false. But not knowing that I knew that, he posted it here to discredit Kelly and to make a dig at AE, I believe, but mainly to discredit Kelly as a way of taking a shot at me, I guess. I don't know why he thought what Kelly's did to deserve that. I'd like you to comment on that in light of some of the stuff you're talking about.
Well, to me, it's an indication of motive, okay? And let me step back from that situation and tell you about a different situation, because I think it will speak to what you're talking about. Back in the early days of my research into the Pentagon, I was talking with Craig Ranke, who is one of the guys from the citizen investigation team that did the investigation at the Pentagon, which I think was groundbreaking. Well, what a lot of people don't know is that Craig Ranke and I did not get along at all. I mean, I felt that Craig was very, very rude to me on many occasions and made things very difficult in our relationship. But the difference is I still promote the evidence that he uncovered because it's the truth. Okay. So if you're dealing with a person that cannot separate their feelings about somebody that they don't get along with from what's important to get at from the truth, then you're dealing with somebody that doesn't have truth as their ultimate motivation. Their motivation is different. Maybe their motivation is personal. Maybe they really are operatives. I don't know. But I think a lot of people get their ego involved, and this can create all kinds of problems. And they're not necessarily professional disinformants if they do this, but their motivations are not the best. So you're dealing with somebody that maybe their ego is the motivation for that. Maybe they have personal reasons for doing what they do. But the point is, their motivation is not to get at what is the most important truths in the 9/11 truth movement. Their motivation is not to promote those truths regardless of how you feel about somebody. Okay, regardless of how people feel about me, these disinformation tactics are used all the time. Okay, I'm just the messenger bringing the message that this is a reality, that infiltration is a reality. Okay, and people can dislike me for saying that openly, but it is nonetheless a reality. So, you know, it's one of the hardest things to do is to differentiate between somebody that is operating from motivations that are maybe ego-based, or maybe just personal based, or maybe they're just misinformed. Okay. It's hard to separate them from people that are genuinely trying to disrupt us, to destroy our movement. And the only thing I can say is you have to look at the pattern of behavior. You have to look at their demeanor on the whole basis. You can't just look at a single incident and make a determination. You have to look at the patterns of behavior and the demeanor. And I think the demeanor says it all. But I wanted to read to you something from the 8 traits of a disinformationist, because I think it applies in so many cases. Okay, one of the ways you can determine if somebody's not legitimate is they will have the 6th characteristic of the 8 traits is artificial emotions. So you'll notice in people that are genuinely operatives, they have an odd kind of artificial emotionalism and an unusually thick skin, and an ability to persevere and persist even in the face of overwhelming criticism and unacceptance. Like, I think Wayne Costi is a perfect example of this.
Yeah.
Okay.
So do I.
He just will not stop, no matter how many points you prove where he's wrong, or he's using bad information, whatever. He won't stop. And that likely stems from real intelligence community training, that no matter how condemning the evidence is, you deny everything and you never become emotionally involved or reactive. The net result is that a disinfo artist, it can seem artificial. They can have like these artificial like emotions. And you'll notice that they might start a comment, pretending to be very emotional and angry, but by the end of it, they've forgotten that they're mad because it's fake. And at the end, they're not mad anymore. And this trait, I've seen this in action many times, the artificial emotions.
Well, if I can just add, I think in the example that I gave, you're certainly giving the benefit of the doubt, and I I credit you for your generosity of spirit in that. I guess I would just say though that regardless of whether ego is at the root of a particular tactic or not, my question is, how can you claim to be a 9/11 truther if you're prepared to attack somebody using information you know is false? I mean, I'm talking 6,000 words of slander against a person who is a good truther, an honest truther.
Yeah, I know Kelly. She's
Yeah,
awesome.
right.
You can't. That's the short answer. You're right. You can't be a truther and also lie and also support lies. You have to be one or the other. That's just the way it is.
I know David Schlesinger. I used to live with him, and I'm very familiar with the incident. And I think he was telling the truth.
About
He
Kelly?
was telling the truth about what?
About Kelly. I think
What about
that
her?
group was infiltrated and she was in on it.
Okay.
What do you base that on?
Is there evidence to support your contention?
I don't have any evidence now. I didn't know it was going to be brought up, but I have over the years developed that strong opinion.
Okay,
Well-
what is your opinion based on?
Well, number one, I used to live with David, and he's a very moral character. And he
I've
really
had
gave
many
us all
conversations with David, by the way.
right. He really put us all into AE 9/11 truth, and I think he was doing too good a job. And Richard Gage was the other one involved, and he found himself kicked out shortly thereafter.
Hmm.
It wasn't shortly thereafter, it was many years after.
Yeah, well, I've had many conversations, as I said, with David Schlesinger. Many of them were very difficult conversations, and I found him to be inflexible, unwilling to listen to other people's evidence or information, or to even consider other people's opinions. He came off to me like someone who thinks he's absolutely right about everything and won't listen to anybody else. He knows the way, and that's it. If you don't do it David's way, you're a bad guy.
Well, I know David too, and if he's a paid operative, then they're severely underpaying him. The man
Well-
is constantly trying to make ends meet. So
Well,
I don't
think-
necessarily think he's a paid operative, but he's way off the mark when it comes to talking about Kelly David. I can tell you that.
well, you can be off the mark and not be and still be genuine.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's true. That's true.
No,
Mhm.
You can be genuine, but you can still do a lot of damage. You can be a loose cannon, raging around on the deck of the ship, poking holes in the hull.
Well, in a way, isn't that what you guys are doing?
no, it's not,
Well,
Susan. Would you?
So the question is, let's address this, okay?
Yeah, I think
So
so. Yeah.
What is Craig's article, and what am I doing here? What am I talking about? I'll tell you what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the reality that there are real nefarious people that have infiltrated our group, our 9/11 Truth movement, and they are doing damage, real damage. They're also investigating all of us. We're on lists. Believe me, we're on lists, and they are watching us. They are listening to us. And you can know this is true by the demeanor of the government. Okay. Uh, for example, you look at what they've done to the January 6th defendants, okay, who shouldn't even be defendants. They have tried to portray those people who were there for a protest against what they felt was an unjust theft of their election. Okay. They tried to portray them as insurrectionists, enemies of the state. When the government says you're an enemy of the state, and they did this to Ammon Bundy, by the way, when they say you are a domestic terrorist, what they're saying is they're going to use the whole power of the government to crush you, to destroy you. They're going to do everything they can to destroy you. I know personally two people that one is in prison right now for the January 6th event, and one is waiting for his sentencing. And let me tell you, they're both awesome people, very, very good people, and they didn't do anything. One guy,
I'm
Derek
sorry, Adam.
Kennison,
What you're getting into the January 6th, which is deflecting from what I just said. That wasn't answering any
Okay.
of that question.
Well, okay, so the question is,
You were using one of your own
is
deeds,
exposing
deflecting.
is exposing people that are disrupting and trying to destroy the 9/11 Truth movement, is that in itself disruptive behavior, or is it a service that's being performed to try to help us correct the record, stop these people from what they're doing. For example, when James O'Keefe exposed Pfizer, I am positive that Pfizer hates James O'Keefe for exposing what they were doing, okay, which was very nefarious.
But
But-
Pfizer's not within the same camp. It's not infiltrating. Pfizer's
No, I'm
side
talking
altogether.
about, for example, what Craig is doing with his article. He's acting as an investigative journalist, exposing, he's talking about a story, something that happened, something that's really going on in the truth movement. Okay. Now, is that disruption or is that good journalistic reporting? That's the question we're really asking about here. Is he disrupting and doing it for malevolent reasons, or is he trying to help us by exposing a genuine operation that's going on in our midst? That's really what the debate is about.
Okay, my issue with the concentration of this is that we're getting into personalities and we're getting away from our real mission. Now, I understand the idea that we definitely need to be alert to infiltrators, but that's not our main mission, to be alert to infiltrators. Our main mission is to get truth for 9/11. So it kind of disturbs me that so much effort is being put in pointing fingers. And
let's look at that.
that splinters the movement too, when it's too much effort into that. Instead of picking on people, pick on their, I don't want to.
Well, wait a second though. Is it picking on somebody to say, hey, XYZ person lied about this, this, and this? Is that an attack on the person?
Yes,
Or
it is.
is it,
Because you can say
is it
that what
saying-
what X said is
is
incorrect.
false? Right.
Yes, but to point it out as X is lying. No, you say
Well,
X
what
was
if X,
incorrect.
just bear with me for a second, a little
Yeah.
thought experiment. What if X really is lying? And you have evidence that this person is lying, and you present it in your article, like Craig has. Then what?
I still say you go after the facts, not the person.
All right. Well, what if the fact is that the person is a liar and
Exactly.
the person is lying?
Yes.
Well, David Schlesinger's been involved in the peace movement in the Boston area for
Right.
approximately 50 years. And he really,
Yeah.
he's earned his creds. He may be a little irritable at sometimes, but there's no questioning, because he had a very good paying job. He's spent his time
Mhm.
working for us. He was the president of his class at MIT. He's got all kinds of creds. He could be very
Well,
rich, but he's doing this.
hang on a second though. Does that mean he should be in charge of the day-to-day operations at AE 9/11 Truth?
I was there and I heard that he was not in charge. He was just
Right.
trying to get something done.
So he was not in charge, and he had disagreements about what AE 9/11 Truth should do and should not do. And the leadership of AE 9/11 Truth decided that they didn't want to follow David's plan, and they asked him to leave. So what are we really saying here? Does that mean that AE 9/11 Truth leadership are somehow bad because David's a good guy? Just because David's a good guy, that doesn't mean his strategy was the best for AE 9/11 Truth. Maybe the leaders disagreed with what David had to say. See, I'm not really part of AE 9/11 Truth. I'm just giving you possibilities here. I'm not really involved, and I haven't talked to David in quite a while, but I do know from some of my conversations that he was not willing to listen to some of the things I had to say, and he was difficult with me. So that's all I can say.
Well,
Well,
people are people, and there's some people who are difficult, but they can still be genuine.
Right.
Yeah.
Agreed.
I hope I get a chance to comment again, Susan. I hope I get a chance to get in again, because
Yeah.
there are things I'd like to say about what you're saying. And first of all, nobody's accused David Schlesinger of anything, so I'm not sure why we're talking about David Schlesinger. I made the point that David Schlesinger created a website called "Is Kelly David a Police Agent?" And I don't hear anybody criticizing that. I get criticized, but I don't hear any criticism about anybody other than me in this realm. Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm not accusing Schlesinger of anything other than doing something really harmful, because he had no evidence, zero evidence to support the statement. Now, I only brought it up because Jean Laratonda posted it to malign Kelly David, who doesn't even work at AE anymore. So he wanted to malign her because he wanted to indirectly take a shot at me in our little discussion about this article. And he knew the details of this because I got an email that it was shared with a bunch of people. I got it on my computer where he says, "I know it's garbage. I used to think it was true, but now I know it's garbage." So a month later, he takes something he knows is a lie and he puts it up on the comment section to malign Kelly David. Now, you want me to just deal with the information, like, well, I disagree with you, Gene, about Kelly David being a police agent, so I respectfully don't. I mean, what he did is an obvious lie. I mean, there's no other way to look at it. And if we're just going to sort of say, oh, well, okay, then I think we have a big problem.
I think we do have a big problem. We do have a big problem because we're not working on an investigation anymore. We're working on trying to dig people out of our group.
Oh, Jesus.
Yeah.
Susan,
Well,
I mean, do you
but anyway, Al has his hand up, and he's been very patient for a long time. Did you still have a question, Al?
It's not directly related. I had a question about who drew up the rules of disinformation. I don't know where that came from. Maybe Adam.
Yeah, it's by a guy named H. Michael Sweeney. And I posted the whole article in the chat section, so you can grab it from there,
Okay.
and it has his credit on there.
Okay. We had a couple of, in my mind, some interesting interchanges on the war room with some people that were bringing up Judy Woods as almost a distraction to the conversation that we were having.
Mhm.
And I know Sandra had tried to block it somehow, but they continued on, and they struck me as being,
Yeah.
somewhat disingenuous due to what we were talking about. It had nothing to do with Judy Woods.
Yeah,
And that put my
that's one of the D's. That's distract. That's to
raised
take
my
people off of the discussion and distract onto something else.
okay. And then finally, what Gene had always called the rude boys that used to show up periodically in the war room. And the one guy I always, I mean, I don't know.
I think I'm one of the rude
people.
boys.
I'm sorry.
I might be. I don't know.
No, it wasn't you. It was Adam Fitzgerald. I don't mean to discourage him, but
he's a jerk. That
he
guy's a
comes
jerk.
across as the poster boy for what you might imagine to be a disinformation type, even though what
I
he
couldn't
said,
agree more with you.
Yes.
well, I don't know anything about him other than he shows up and you know, some of his points are well taken, but his attitude is really hard to deal
Yeah.
with.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Those were just comments that I had, and
Yeah.
I wanted to, you know, my only beef, maybe with Craig or anybody in this room is, and I agree with Susan, that you have to remain respectful. If you lower yourself to name calling, or, you know, I know, you know, maybe these people are liars, but I still think if you take the high road.
Let me make a comment about that. Because I have personally never seen Craig call anyone scum, and David Chandler called CIT scum in writing. In way back in the beginning of Pentagon research, there was a guy named Jim Hoffman
Oh,
that
yeah.
he made a snide remark about CIT's investigation. They put out a film called what was it? The Pentagon Smoking Gun Edition was the name of the video that they put out. So Jim Hoffman put out this really condescending article, and he called it the Pentagon Smoking Crack Edition. Okay. But nobody called him out about that. Nobody's calling out David
Yeah.
Chandler about calling CIT scum.
Yep.
Nobody's calling any of these people out. They're just singling
Yep.
out the people that are really digging deep into the Pentagon evidence, which is
Yep.
the most dangerous evidence to the perpetrators. I'm
Exactly.
telling you, the Pentagon is the tip of the spear. That is where they're most vulnerable, and they know it. We have the goods on the government and the operatives that were involved in 9/11 at the Pentagon. We
Now you-
know that they are lying about a plane hitting that building. We know they staged the crime scene, and the only people that could do that is the Pentagon higher ups themselves, and government operatives are the only ones that could do that. So this particular evidence has been the target of disinformation for more than a decade. They are working overtime trying to prevent our evidence at the Pentagon from being widely known among people. They're doing everything they can to suppress it,
I have a
using
comment
all
too.
kinds of dirty tricks.
Well, that makes
someone spoke
sense.
up? Someone has said they had a comment?
Yeah, I do, Barbara.
Oh, hi, Barbara.
Shall I go ahead?
I think so.
Go ahead, go ahead.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I just want to just remind people of a really big picture here without going into individuals. For years, in my opinion, very informed opinion, for years, the tactic of those who were harming us, let's just put it that way, whether they were formally COINTELPRO types or not, was that don't even talk or look about the Pentagon. Just stay away from it. Okay? And then I broke that taboo. And once I broke that taboo, the cabal is what I call them, came out of the woodwork. And with slightly different takes on the interpretation of evidence. And the reason that there are still honest debates about the interpretation of the evidence is because the Pentagon, of course, has withheld the proof of what happened there, and they have it. Ever since I broke that taboo, and what I call the cabal, literally published the first, they came out of the closet attacking me in their long article. And after that, everybody knew who they were because their names were on that article. And they include all the people who are mentioned here. So once the taboo was broken, just don't go to the Pentagon, don't go there. And there are still people in the movement who don't want you to do that, including some of the very best people about the World Trade Center. There is honest disagreement as to whether the movement with its public face should be focused still to this day just on the World Trade Center or also go to the Pentagon. And those of us who know that the Pentagon is the tip of the spear, which it absolutely is, know that that is a very misguided way to go forward. And then after that taboo was broken and the cabal came out of the woodwork and started attacking all of us, regardless of our interpretation of the evidence, the minor evidence that has been released by the Pentagon, including doctored evidence, after that, their tactic changed. Their tactic changed to essentially pushing the official story, with the sole exception really that, as Adam said, well, Honey Hunter probably, no hijacker, especially Honey Hunter, could have been in control at the very end when it allegedly hit the building. Well, that's ridiculous. And even someone who has been so good on the World Trade Center, Kevin Ryan, in his book, Another 19, I think it's chapter 10 in the Pentagon chapter, the very first page, I think the second paragraph, he actually says in words, and this is almost verbatim, it is incumbent upon, quote, almost verbatim, quote, it is incumbent upon the 9/11 Truth movement to accept as much as possible of the official story at the Pentagon as possible. Well, these people wouldn't be caught dead saying that about the World Trade Center. So you can tell that there is this layered disinformation program.
Yep.
And
Their
we're
demeanor
in
says it
layer
all.
2.
It really does.
We're in layer 2. So that's my comment.
Well, Barbara, I haven't said this much, but I agree with you a lot on what you just said. I wrote an article called Collapsed versus Demolished, the Language of Deception. And if I could get just briefly, I'll do an example here. If people could raise their hands, if they know that the World Trade Center collapsed, if you could raise your hand. Do you know that the World Trade Center collapsed? Okay, good. I don't see very many hands. Okay. So if you raised your hands, you just fell into what they call a verbal frame. Okay. The mainstream media and the government always says that the World Trade Center collapsed because they're using the word intentionally, because the World Trade Center did not collapse. It was blown up with explosives. It was demolished. Demolished and collapsed have opposing definitions, okay? So what they're doing is they're putting a mental frame around you to lock you into a trap. It's a mental construct, it's a trap. So anytime that a person says, oh yeah, the World Trade Center collapsed, they're falling into the trap of our enemies. They're falling into the trap of the perpetrators because they're describing what happened at the World Trade Center incorrectly, because it didn't collapse. It was blown up with explosives. And you have to differentiate. So this is one of the subtle ways that they're trying to control us. And the reason we have to weed out people that are doing these kinds of things is because they're very effective. And you have to get the people that are genuinely operatives, genuinely trying to disrupt our movement. You have to get them out. Otherwise, they're going to poison the well that everybody drinks from. If you let them succeed in poisoning the well, like for example, if you let them succeed in this idea that we shouldn't discuss the Pentagon because it's controversial, okay, you just allowed them to take one of the most important pieces of 9/11 evidence off the table. So the
Exactly.
perpetrators can go, we don't have to worry about that anymore because they got that off the table. And that was what we were most worried about. So
And that
if
was
you
their
allow
very
that to
first
happen,
goal.
you are falling into a trap.
That was their very first strategy, and it failed.
But
Could I
Adam,
just add, could I just add a little? Oh, sorry. I just want to add a quick point. I'll
you're
wait my turn.
confusing one, the media and its lies and its tricks. Chomsky wrote a book about it, and there's a recent video about that. They use all kinds of words in about Gaza that has everybody fooled. How do I know they're fooled? Because I live in New Hampshire, and Biden won by a landslide in a write-in campaign, and everyone was saying that everyone thought the Israelis were being attacked, and that Israel is the only democracy in the Middle East and fighting for democracy. And all these words from the media literally had half of New Hampshire fooled because they all voted for Biden.
Well, literally, almost every single word spoken by the corporate whore media is a lie. Almost everything that they say is a lie. They might tell the truth about the weather. They might tell the truth about the sports scores, but that's it. Otherwise, they are lying. I promise you they're lying about everything. The
Could I
media
add something?
is, let's just talk truth here. The media is controlled and owned by Zionists. They are extremely pro-Israel and extremely anti-Palestine. So they are never going to tell you anything favorable to the Palestinian side of the argument. Never. They will never tell you that. They're also owned and controlled mostly by BlackRock. BlackRock owns Pfizer. So you're not going to hear anything true about how dangerous the vaccines are from the corporate whore media. You won't hear anything that's true because they're beholden to BlackRock, and BlackRock owns Pfizer and Moderna. Okay? The fix is in with the media. They can't tell you the truth. They'd be fired immediately if they told you the truth.
Or killed.
Or killed, yeah.
But
Could
Adam
I
use with picking on people like David Schlesinger, who's I'm an oddball.
We're not picking on. Oh, we're not picking on David Schlesinger. That really has nothing to do with what anybody was saying tonight. It has nothing to do with picking on David
All I
Schlesinger.
said about David was I had some very difficult conversations with him, and I found him to be difficult to talk to, and he didn't really consider what I had to say. That's all I've said about David Schlesinger.
He's very testy, but the two different topics are very, very separate. The media and crazies. I consider myself a crazy in the movement. The crazies in the movement are good. The media is bad.
Well, okay. Can I make a comment, Adam? If I may,
Sure.
I don't want to interrupt anybody, but
let me just say this though. I think some people that maybe are talking about things that I disagree with, I think some of them are genuinely good people, and they're saying what they honestly believe, and they might just be misinformed. Okay, maybe they know more than I do. Maybe they're right about something that I'm wrong about. But some of the people that are doing these things are not nice people. Some of them are doing it for a purpose. Some of them are doing it to try to destroy us.
I'm
I'm not saying David is one of those. I'm just saying that those people exist. This is real.
I'd like to interject something. I go by, my gut and the people I've met in the 9/11 Truth movement. And, I regard highly, without naming names, some of the people that believe Chandler and and Costi, and I have great respect for them. I don't discuss the Pentagon because I don't feel the way they do. And you know, Gene, I admire greatly, Sandra, all these people have become, you know, really good friends almost. And so I really have a hard time, you know, calling people names. And, you know, I know Craig gets very exercised in saying, you know, this so-and-so and that so-and-so. And I just, as I say, I mean, I'd much rather take the high road and, you know, deal with the evidence than what Gene always
Well,
says.
but a second ago, Alfred, you just said you don't deal with the Pentagon.
Well, no, with them,
Because
I
of them.
don't. With one, I don't want to name his name because maybe he wouldn't appreciate it. But I mean, I started with him from the very beginning, in Boston at the Tea Party, and you know, I regard him as my closest friend in the movement, and I keep telling him, well, I'm not, you know, I know I steer clear of because he is convinced that they're right. And but I don't agree with
Well,
that.
they're not.
Yeah, well,
But
and I
okay.
don't agree.
Okay.
Believe me, it just common sense will tell you that what they're saying doesn't make any sense. Anyway, but my point is, you know, it's very hard when you're dealing with people you've known for years and worked in the 9/11 truth movement, and then to sort of, you know, think of them as disinformation or, you know, some kind of
Right.
nefarious motives. Because I would swear by this one particular individual. I mean, I would be totally shocked if that were the case.
Well, he might have been I don't know a nice way to say it. He might have been sucked in by disinformation.
Yeah,
Good way.
He might be a good person.
yeah.
He might just have been fooled by some clever disinformation. There's a lot of people
Could
that buy
be.
into Judy Woods stuff. There's a
Yeah.
lot of people that buy into the you know, no planes were actually hit the towers. You know, it's wrong, but some of them that believe those things are good people. I have no doubt about that.
You have the whole Shanksville story, which I
Right.
mean, it's just garbage. And yet people won't talk about it, or
Yeah,
some
it's
won't.
obviously false.
Yeah.
Clearly false.
Part of the problem, but Al, you actually pointed to the problem, which is that people don't want to talk about the Pentagon because it has been made into something that seems to be controversial. In fact, if you were to poll everybody in the 9/11 Truth movement, I would venture a guess, and I think Adam, you can tell me if you agree with me, that probably 85% of the movement doesn't think that a 757 hit the Pentagon, right? 85% is, I think, a conservative estimate. As for Shanksville, I'd say it's more than 95% don't believe a plane buried itself under the ground in a field in Shanksville. But it's interesting that David Chandler also seems to believe that too. So you know, I made the point in a presentation on our 9/11 teleconference a couple of years ago or a few years ago that I think this group is going to move to Shanksville next, and they did. Although then not as aggressively as I thought maybe they would. But anyway, I want to say before, just hold on a second now. I want to make a point to you, Al, because you said about calling people names. And I want to take, if you're referring to me, I want to take exception to that. That is not what I am doing. First of all, if I use the word lie, it's because they got caught in a lie, a blatant lie that it isn't a matter of opinion. It's a clear-cut lie. Otherwise, I will describe it differently. So if you're talking about people calling people names, that's not what I'm doing. Okay? The article that I just posted is very detailed, and you can judge for yourself what you think of the idea of Ted Walter trying to get Leroy Halsey to abandon and depart from architects and engineers. Is that a good thing for the truth movement? I would argue that's a very destructive thing for the truth movement, and it seems to fit a pattern that has emerged, particularly recently, of people really going after AE. So I think that's a big concern, and I'm not calling anybody a name. I get called a lot of names myself.
Yeah.
But I'm not. I'm talking about facts, and
Well, I get called names a lot too.
behavior. What's that?
I get called names quite a bit too. I don't really give a
Well,
crap.
there's another
Because
example.
here's the thing, Alfred. Here's the thing. Okay. If you are laser focused on getting the truth about 9/11 out there, and you are laser focused about getting justice for 9/11, which is my goal, okay, then if anyone is in the way of that, if anyone is hindering that, you've got to smash through that. You've got to, whether it's uncomfortable or not, whether you have disagreements with people or not, it doesn't matter. The stakes are too high to be concerned about people's feelings. If somebody's feelings get hurt, okay, that's bad. But in comparison to what happened on 9/11, it's nothing. It doesn't matter. Okay. We
Adam?
have to be tough enough to blast through these little annoying things, personality conflicts, like the ones we're talking about here. They don't matter. They don't matter at all. All that
Adam?
matters is what is the goal here? Or think of it from the opposite side. What is the goal of the people trying to stop us? What is their goal? Okay. If you think of it from that perspective, from the opposite side of the coin, what their goal is, how they got to think to themselves, how do we stop these guys from getting the truth out to the world about what we really did? How do we do that? Well, what if one of their main projects, one of their main goals is to take the Pentagon evidence off the table?
Yes.
So that none of us dig into it deep enough to find out, oh, that's really the Achilles heel that they're protecting right there. So
Yeah, I agree with
they
what
might
you're
be
saying. I
doing
agree with what
exactly
you're saying.
that. And so far, they've been partially successful
But
in
let
getting
me
people
tell
to
you,
take it off the table.
from a personal standpoint, I regard Ted Walters as a sincere, honest guy. And that's the way he strikes me. And I just can't imagine him being, what, maybe he's been led astray, but I don't see him as an enemy any more than I see you as an enemy. Anybody that's promoting 9/11 truth is okay with me. I agree that if they're telling you you can't look at this with any other point of view, then there is a problem.
Adam?
Well,
Did I say
here's the thing. Here's the thing with Ted Walter. Okay, I would say this: if he's willing to go on the record and discuss what Craig said about what he did, and if he was found to be doing something that he shouldn't, if he comes clean and says, "Hey, you're right, Craig, I shouldn't have done that," then I'll consider Ted Walter to be an honest truther. But until he does that, until he either refutes what Craig said or comes clean about it and says, yeah, Craig was right, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have done that, I can't trust the guy.
Adam?
Yeah.
Yeah, I just like to, Barb, just to briefly say here, if you could clarify for us, there's some noise, I hope it's not me, a kind of a buzzing noise. If you could clarify for us, I have two sentences. If you could clarify for us what it is you want us to do or not do with what you're saying, because from my point of view, the action item is simply to ignore these people once you realize they're not telling you the facts. Why not just ignore
Oh
them?
no, ignoring them is the exact wrong thing to do.
Yes.
Because then you let them operate freely in your midst. and they can do all
Yes.
kinds of nefarious things.
Well, I don't let them
like
operate in my
set
name. I go
frames, like,
forward with,
Go ahead.
regardless. We don't have to let them affect us.
They are affecting us.
well, they are, yeah.
They're
They
not
are.
affecting me.
Well, they're affecting the movement as a whole because many people in the movement are afraid to even talk about the Pentagon because they've been conned into believing that it's so controversial that I don't want to go there. So the people that are pushing almost the whole official story and who have gotten such strong pushback from people like Adam and myself, those people have succeeded in getting a large part of the movement to put aside the Pentagon evidence. So they've done a real number on this movement. And
Okay,
if we
so
don't,
they've done it. So they've done it, and some people have bought their line. But those of us who don't buy the line, we move forward. Period.
that's fine. But I think of the
Yeah,
movement
we
as a
do.
whole, not just with
We
an
do, but
individual.
if you want the truth movement to reach the whole world, a wider audience, and get real exposure where we have an opportunity to get some real justice, I personally don't believe we're going to get that in an American court. But let's suppose that we get the world to look at our evidence. The Pentagon is key. It's the key to it's the skeleton key that opens the whole thing. And if we allow anybody to suppress it, we're making a huge mistake. We're letting them have a big victory for nothing. We're just acquiescing to let them walk all over us.
I was in another group that was thoroughly infiltrated. I don't want to bring up the name, but it was animal rights. And everybody was attacked. The leader, they did a lot of research on him and found an ex-wife who would say bad things about him. And people are accused of mistreating their pets and whatever. And it ended up getting rid of all these bad people, supposedly. And then there was nothing left. And so I think we have to just soldier on with a whole bunch of different people working together, even though we disagree on this or that.
Well, okay. I can give you a couple films you should watch. Check out a film called Wag the Dog, and you will learn about how destructive and how dangerous disinformation can be by watching that film. I believe the dog has been wagged several times, once in relation to the war on Iraq and the war on Afghanistan as well. But watch Wag the Dog and watch another movie called The Insider with Russell Crowe. Now, in that film, The Insider, you see that there was a whistleblower inside one of the big cigarette companies. And that company, Brown and Williamson, actually hired FBI people to go and intimidate the whistleblower and threaten him. And they made all kinds of problems for him. But the point I'm making is that if you allow them to succeed, then that whistleblower never gets to come forward. He never gets to reveal his evidence, and the whole thing is shut down at the source. So if we allow disinformation operatives to shut down the discussion of the Pentagon, you just handed them a victory on a silver platter. You just handed the bad guys a victory on a silver
But we're
platter.
not doing that. We're not letting them shut us down.
Well, the key to the Pentagon are the videos, and I can't for the life of me figure out how anybody accepts that they won't release those all the videos that were available. It would blow the thing wide open.
I guess that's why they don't
Right.
release them.
Well,
Well,
look at
of course,
the
but-
demeanor of the government. Look at the demeanor. Okay, if the FBI was legitimately an American law enforcement agency with the goal in mind to solve the crime of 9/11, they would have released those videos. They wouldn't suppress it. They'd release everything they know about what happened at the World Trade Center. They'd release every scrap of information about the plane parts they found in Shanksville, about the plane parts they found at the World Trade Center, if there really were any. But the point is, their demeanor would be completely opposite from the way it is. The way it is. The way it is, they're treating us like we're the bad guys for investigating
Of course.
the crime. So what does that tell you? That tells you that they are in on the crime, or at least they're in on the cover up.
Yeah. All of the arguments pro and con to what happened at the Pentagon would, I mean, it's almost, the whole focus should be on those videos, and everybody should be screaming bloody murder about, because why hang your hat on, did a plane fly into it, or was it a missile, or, maybe there is
Well, we're
evidence.
way past that though. Have you seen Xander Arenas' video where he proves mathematically that what is in that video footage that the Pentagon released? He proves mathematically without any question that could not be a 757
Yeah, I think
on
I
that
have
video.
seen that, yeah.
Have you
but-
seen it?
Yeah, I think I have.
That's damning evidence. And
Well,
you know what?
let me
I
clarify
don't
that.
see I don't see very many people in the 9/11 Truth movement, aside from me and maybe Craig, promoting that video at all. Nobody
I promote
promotes
it.
it.
I promote it, but let me make a qualification about that video. And I've talked at length with Xander about this, and he agrees. You can check with him. What he's demonstrated there, assuming you buy his argument, and I do, his demonstration, what he has demonstrated is that if the plane in that doctored video clip of the 5 frames, if it came in on what they claim is the path, which it wasn't, but if it actually came in on that path, it could not have been a 757. So that's very critical context. Okay.
Okay.
Hold on a second. If it came in on a different path, then the plane would have even been longer in the video than it actually was.
Yeah.
No,
if
no,
the-
no.
if
What,
the
what I
plane-
mean, what I mean
Barbara,
is,
hang on a second. I know
hold on a
this,
second, please. What I
I know
meant
this
was,
subject really well.
hold on.
And Craig's correct. If the plane came on a path closer to the heliport, it would have been bigger in the frame, not
Now,
smaller.
my point is it could have been further away also. Just talk to Xander about it. His claim about what he's shown is assuming the official story path.
Right.
Remember that. Okay.
Right. And
I
it
don't think-
also assumes, by the way, it also assumes that that video is legitimate and it wasn't doctored.
So
Which
there's
I
very
believe it
strong
was.
evidence it was doctored, in fact.
Yeah. I believe it was, yeah. But nevertheless, no matter what, whether it was doctored or not, he's proven that they are lying.
Yeah,
And
that's the
when
most
you
important
have
thing.
ironclad proof that the government is lying about 9/11, which he does,
Right.
that should be paramount in people's minds about, let's
Yeah.
get this out to the whole world. Let's let the whole world see this and
Right.
let's promote it.
Yes, and we
That's
have to
not happening.
remember why the government leaked. Either the FBI or the DOD actually leaked the 5 frames that later were shown to be, in the Moussaoui trial, were shown to be part of a video. We have to remember why the government leaked that in the spring of 2002. It leaked it because of the worldwide attention that the Pentagate book got.
Mhm.
Claiming, I think falsely, but I could be wrong, that it was a missile. But nevertheless, the book Pentagon came out that was very, very credible and took Europe by storm.
Yeah.
And the government decided that we have to do something to squash this. So they put out those 5 frames.
Right. Well, I have no doubt that they would put out false video. I mean, I personally think that the video is a fraud.
And so
But
were the 5 frames.
in either, yeah, the 5 frames are a fraud. But in either case, it's still the coup de grace because it
Yes.
can't be, their official story cannot be true. Either way.
Correct.
And this
So
is what
that's
the other, this
that's
is what the
super
other
important.
group, this is what the other group is trying to distract us from. And I think we should be concerned about that instead of just saying, oh, well, it's just an honest disagreement. I mean, if a group in the movement is pushing almost every single element of the official story, and and that's their main focus for years and years and years, I think we should be concerned about that. And if they're succeeding, as Adam pointed out, in getting people to ditch the Pentagon evidence, which they have, a lot of people, that's
No,
a
they-
problem. And I kind of feel like sometimes I feel like I keep revealing some of the underhanded tactics that they use, and I wonder where is the rest of the movement. Like I don't want to do this all the time. I don't want to be doing this year after year. I really don't. But it's like, if it weren't for people, I mean, it's people like Adam here. Like, he gets it, and he understands, and he's with me on it. But most people are just going to come out with stuff like, oh, well, I don't believe in calling people names. Like, read my stuff, you'll see that's not what it's about.
Well, look, you know, here's the thing. This is what it comes down to for me. I saw a piece of footage on 9/11 that I will never forget. It burned into my mind like a laser bullet into my mind. I'll never forget it. I saw a man jump out of a window at the World Trade Center, and he had a blanket. And the man was trying to make a parachute out of the blanket. And the tragic horror of that moment stuck in my mind, and I've never been able to forget that. And I'll tell you what, if I have to steamroll over people that don't like me to get justice for that man, then I'll do it. I'll do it. Because if you're in the way of this of getting justice for 9/11, then I am your mortal enemy and I will steamroll over you. That's just the way it's going to be. That's how I feel about it.
Well said.
Well, I would like to add that the Lawyers Committee for 9/11 inquiry is never going to give up on the Pentagon. It will be our next focus after we file our next legal filing in the DC federal court on the anthrax petition, the anthrax attacks petition. And then we're focusing on the Pentagon, and we're focusing on getting the all of the videos, in particular the Sheraton Hotel video, which tells the whole story very clearly.
Well,
So
they should be talking to Craig. They should be talking to Craig Ranke. They should be talking to Aldo. They should be talking to Xander. I don't care if they talk to me, but I know the subject. But they should be talking to those people if they're serious about.
we already have all of that evidence within the Lawyers Committee. I'm the chairman of the board.
Well, I think they should talk to Craig Ranke and Aldo as well.
We have their evidence.
I'm sorry, we're coming up to almost 8:30 now. Did you
Let's
want to
do-
continue?
Just to recap, I'm wondering if you could go over those 4Ds again.
Oh, sure. Let me bring that up.
That'd be a good way to wrap this up.
Okay, well, the goals of the people that are trying to destroy us are to do a number of things. And it's actually the 5Ds.
Yeah.
They're here to disrupt our progress, delay our progress, and very importantly, they're here to demoralize us and get us to give up. I can't tell you how hard it's been to persevere. I can't imagine what Craig has gone through, because he's had it even worse than me. But the effort to demoralize us and get us to quit has been extreme. Anyway, disrupt, delay, demoralize, and discredit, and also to spread disinformation. That's the goals of the people that are trying to take us down.
We could use that with other aspects of life too. To tell you the truth, I'm going through it at work.
Mhm.
Our company that is a nonprofit, and it's been taken over by a for-profit organization. And I see these 5Ds being done all the time. Every day. It makes me so angry.
Yeah, these are time-honored tactics that have been used for centuries. And they're I mean, it's a orchestrated plan, and there's certain people that know how to do this. Like for instance, Edward Bernays wrote a book called Propaganda. And if you look at Edward Bernays, oh my God, I mean, you see the machinations they that they go into. It's just incredible.
Well, I really loved your demonstration with one of our own, Richard Kreshnick, on how you can plant a seed into the mind of people.
Yeah.
And even those who are aware of it fall prey to this technique.
Yeah.
Really,
Well, I'll give you a quick one that you can take with you. This one is something that Obama used quite a bit, and you might like this one. Sorry, I'm trying to bring up my screen. Okay, there we go. So if you are a politician giving a speech, and you have to, in order to not be found guilty of fraud, you have to disclose something that you've done or whatever. Let's say you have to tell it to the public because of the rules related to government. You can tell somebody something and then get them to almost immediately forget it, what you just told them. And it's a neurolinguistic trick. And here's how it works. Let's suppose I'm giving a speech and I say, well, ladies and gentlemen, unfortunately, I'm going to have to raise taxes slightly on the middle class in the future. But looking forward to tomorrow, this is going to yield results that are going to be magnificent for the country. Okay. So in that little segment of talking, what I did was I told the crowd something that should be very unpopular, that I'm going to raise their taxes I'm going to raise taxes on the middle class. That's what I said. But then I said, but looking into the future, and I made a big point of saying, looking into the future. Okay. So what that does is that takes the person's mind off of what you just said. And now they're looking into the future and they just forget about what you just said. So these are techniques that they use to a T, and they're manipulating us, and they're using really deceptive methods to do it. And that's one of them. Just thought you'd like that little demonstration.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I really appreciate your coming on to speak with us tonight. It's been very enlightening.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
I haven't said anything, but I just want to say that I find this whole discussion so valuable. It is on so many levels, psychological, name calling, propaganda. And there's a lot of disagreement and pushback, but it's been with respect. And I don't know, I just want to thank you all for whatever you've contributed to this. It's really very valuable on so many levels. Yeah.
Thank you, Jane.
Well, I think it's time for the next segment of our Zoom, which is the agenda. You're all welcome to hang on, but I'm gonna stop the recording now. And we'll send the recording to our webmaster and it'll be up on YouTube. And once that's done, I will share it with everyone.
Thank you, Susan. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.